The number one biggest takeaway for me, man, is just the mindset you guys have helped me with in general around truly living life by design, right? And that was when I first came in, and we were working through the BAP coaching beta program at the time, and um, that was what we were working on, man. Like I had done all the things and bought all the things, and anyone outside looking in would look at my life and say like, you have nothing to complain about, but I wasn't happy, right? And I had lost my way, um, probably over the previous 18 months. And then, coming in and working through that problem with you guys and seeing all the things that we were focused on and what truly was a vision of like what is a good life, right? It really just came down to I was focused on all the wrong things, and what I was defining as success wasn't really success, right? Um, and you guys have helped me iron that out and paint a clear path and picture. And whether it was the BAP going through it with you or the whiteboard scenario with Roden, and then going into the 30-day challenge and going through that process, which was, something else that I'd never experienced. Like it all came back to solving that one big ass problem, which was living life by design. And finding a life of fulfillment, right? Doing what you love, doing what you're good at, doing what the world needs, and doing it with passion and purpose. So
Oh yeah, I love that, man. And that's, if you're listening, that's what this whole channel is about, is like education around the journey to the top 1%. And how do we get there? It's by becoming 1% better daily. So yeah, before we hop back into this, like, why don't you tell them who you are and what you do, and let's get into it, bro.
yeah, so Acesa Garrard, Columbus, Ohio, real estate investor, marketing guru, and business consultant as a whole, right? Those are the three things that when we talk about that dream life, that's where I want to sit. And so that's what I'm doing right now and what I'm pursuing.
No, man, I love it. And I'm glad it was funny. I wrote this down and then you went to go ahead and explain it. But that's what was interesting to me is, you kind of stepped into an authority figure extremely quickly inside of Uncaged. And to your point, like from an outside perspective, if anyone had like seen your life prior to Uncage. And I mean, obviously, like Uncage isn't sitting here trying to take credit for what you've done. You're the one that put in the work. We've just seen what's worked for other people and what hasn't. And we kind of culminated conversations around this stuff. And it's up to you to take it or not. In fact, we're on the cusp of, an Uncaged retreat. And, Julian in the group chat made a comment about, he left the retreat after spending Sunday and Monday at the house with his kids, and his kids were like, "Dad, is that our new family?" And Julian was like, "Yeah, man, it's our new family," and they were all excited. And it's funny because you know Julian's been the opposite end of that spectrum, and it's good to have that conversation around you guys because y'all both came from the same places, like both in Ohio. And when you came into Uncaged, you were again traditionally what some people would say, oh, he's successful, like he's got it all going on. And arguably, like Julian was looking for his passion and his purpose and his meaning for life. And my comment to Julian, I haven't even made yet, but I will make, is like, if Julian hadn't been the one to put in the work, he would have robbed his children from being able to say, like, yes, that's our new family. Because at some point, we don't want to hear the excuses. We want to see you putting in the work. And so it's really interesting for you coming in from the top side of things, of what people would see and be like, what does this guy need from this group? Like, what does he need to learn? So, like, for someone that's listening to this, that is that high performer, thank you, that is this high performer, like, what was that journey like for you to either I guess, swallow the pill yourself and be like, look, I've done some cool shit, but there's clearly more to life. Like, what was that been? And then, like, what was that like understanding of, again, no one told you necessarily what to do. There was some, cookie trail, crumb trails, but like lack of better terms, like how am I going to listen to all these other guys tell me how to improve my life? Like that's a pretty wild journey. What was that like for you?
Yeah, like funny you bring up Julian, right? For me, one of the things that kicked me off was Julian, right? And um I had been broken down over a long period of time in a very, very short window, right? It was about 18 months, but it was a whirlwind 18 months of just being lost. And, that obviously having an impact on my relationship, with my kids, having an impact on my friendships outside of here, having an impact on my marriage. And all of it was coming back to like, I just wasn't happy. And, I wasn't refusing to acknowledge it, but I just didn't know what the next path was. And one thing that you and me had connected on a while before Uncaged was like we were just about the work. And, it wasn't, there was no shortcut. There was no, short path to the top of the pyramid. It was just shut up and do the work at the end of the day. And I had watched you do a lot of that work for a lot of time, in another group, um and I idolized it. But then, I was surrounded with the wrong circle, right? Like I was surrounded with the circle that defined success by how big your house was, what kind of car you drive, and um, you know, the goal was to buy a PJ, right? And that wasn't me, but that was who I was surrounded with. And so the choice for me was to get surrounded with people that were willing to get back in the mud, which is what really got me to where I was I was the guy that had a chip on his shoulder that was willing to do whatever it took, no matter how many hours it took, and do the work that no one else was willing to do. And so when I made that decision, like you guys were the ones that I felt like were doing the work. And it wasn't just the work on, you know, making money, right? It wasn't work on, like, it was everything that I was having in my life at the time I was struggling with. It was how to be a better dad. And I was not a bad dad by any means, but I could be more present, right? Same thing with my marriage. I wasn't a bad husband. A lot of people would look at my wife's life and be like, "Oh my God, she has everything." Well, like we were struggling to communicate in a lot of different ways, right? And and I got into the group with the vision of doing the work. And then I got in and I seen Julian. And you looked at my life and you looked at Julian's life at the time, and you'd have been like, wow, opposite end of the spectrum. They can't connect at all on anything. And we did. We connected because we were both from Ohio, and Julian moved to Florida, right? And Florida are the guys that I actually make fun of quite a bit. And but then what I seen from Julian is no matter what was going on in Julian's life, Julian got up and did the work every day, right? And Julian got up and did the work on at the time what was his health. And for me, that was something that I had gotten away from for a very long time. So it became, well, if he can do it, why can't I do it? The only reason I'm not doing it is because of my excuses. So I got up one day, I seen him, and I said, "All right, I'm going to the gym today." I hadn't been to the gym in probably a year at that point, right? So then we just started walking that path, and then that led into the BAP and the Life by Design and wanting to be healthier and wanting to get back into hobbies and wanting to do those things, which then led into the couples retreat at that point, right? Which then we watched Julian's evolution in his relationship, and again about doing the work. But it started with Julian inspiring me as a whole to go do one thing, which then transformed into the next things, right? So
No, for sure. And I mean, there's a few things to kind of unpack from that, but something I want to like sit with this because like I think this is the first time I've like actually processed this, and I want to like, I gotta turn it into some catchy phrase, but so it'll stick. But when you were talking about working fast, because that's something that you and I very much connect on. And when I sit down and talk with other high performers, there's a difference between being a high performer by definition. There's a high performer that also understands like, fail fast or speed to market or whatever the case is. And so it just clicked with me why people who move quickly aren't afraid to fail. And it's because that people who know that they move fast, if you fail, you know that you're just going to move right on and get back to the next. Whereas the people that are scared to fail, it's because they know that like it takes them so long to do anything that if they fail, like how much further does that put them behind, because I mean, shit, you and I probably have more conversations daily about what's gone wrong than what's gone right. But like, that's just we know we're ripping the band-aid off and trying to pursue this journey. But like when and because it comes down to a lot of the like core beliefs that we think, the reason some people get so anxious when light shined on them is because they know they're not doing the work or they're not being who they're supposed to be. So they get anxious, and that means they get desperate. And when you get desperate, you act out of character. And so there's like a lot of this kind of stuff. Like, for me, like an anxious person is someone that knows that they can't stand behind their word. Like, oh, I said I was going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to sleep tonight and I'm going to be anxious and stressed. My mind's going to be racing because I know I'm not a motherfucker that's going to wake up and get my critical tasks done, like whatever it is. So, like, that's really interesting to me and also I think that's why Julian has had, like, from me, I can see a peace of mind in his heart and soul over the last 2, 3 years, even though he ain't making top 1% money, right? And we're all here, and it's not here to bash that. It's us to say, like, because we understand that he's saying fuck your excuses and is constantly working. It's like, bro, we just handed him 2 awards at this retreat, one for health and one for relationships. Well, motherfucker, what's next? It's the fucking wealth
Yep.
one. So like, I'm really excited to watch that journey. But like, I definitely think the reason that I think you and I specifically, and any other person that understands the speed to the market or fail fast, it's because we know that it just ends up being a bump in the road versus an actual fucking wall. What's your
Yeah.
thoughts
I
on
mean,
that?
9 out of 10 times, like, if someone that you idolize, that you look at, the difference between you and them is usually just time horizon. They have more time in. That's 9 out of 10 times that's the case, right? Um, so like my way of, okay, well, how can I catch them? Right? If that's all they have on me, how can I speed up that time and climb that ladder quicker? And for me, where it always came back to was, okay, if I can climb the next rung with speed to execution, I know that I'm going to make mistakes along the way and I might fall 2 rungs, right? But if I can learn the next time when I climb that same rung that I only fall 1 rung next time versus falling two, that's where fail faster came in, right?
Mhm.
So then it became a a math problem essentially of if I can have speed to execution and get there faster, right? If we execute at the same exact level and I'm just faster doing it, well, now I have more time in than the next person that's trying to beat me.
Mhm.
So in my corporate life, that's what it was, what I would implement so fast and I would get such a lead on people that then by the time that they decided to start executing, they were already chasing what was going above and beyond for me, right? We had already gone from good to great. Now we were going above and beyond. So they were always chasing me. And when I would fail or I would learn, I might fall down, but now I'm just falling back down to great. And then I started implementing that in every area of my life too. So then I could look at the people that I idolized that I wanted to be, and I just knew that it was time horizon. But then, boom, time horizon. How do you shorten it? That was always the question I was asking. Okay, if I'm not shorting it and I can't shorten it, then I need to move faster. So then those two things became a pivot point for me on everything. It was how do I move with speed and be the first to execute, or how do I fail faster
Mhm.
every single time?
Yeah. So there's two pieces that are like these will be two squirrel moments because they're important, but also I want to make sure we touch on. So, it's funny at the retreat. So you mentioned your corporate, and it sent me down a spiral of thinking about my corporate. And what made me so deadly with my corporate experience was I got to the point where I didn't want to ask a motherfucker for anything. Like, I didn't want to go chase my answer. I didn't want to. So mind you, this is like pre-chat GPT. Like, you had to like
Yeah.
walk to the motherfucker's office and ask questions.
Yep.
And so like for me, I wanted to learn everything because I didn't want to be held up making decisions based on oh, I'll get back to you, motherfucker. Well, now I'm on your timeline, and that I guarantee you it doesn't move as quickly as mine. And so then you see that translate over into private sector, and it leads us to the same conversation we were having with like Dylan. I think it was like Corey and a few of the other guys that had some of the same questions where it's like, hey, what do I do? It's like, well, motherfucker, we're not going to tell you what to do Because then you're gonna go do it, and then you're gonna come back, and it's, what do I do now? And then, motherfucker, are we business partners now? Like,
Right.
did this just happen? Like, so, for me, looking at that, I'm like, shit, man. Like, my success I see in private sector is a version of that where, which was our response to those guys. Maybe you need to learn how to ask the right questions or how to find the right answers. Like, that is a skill set. So if you can sharpen that skill set of understanding how to find what you're looking for, I think that that is something that a lot of people are missing, is in an era where information is so readily available, and but also there's so much fucking noise. I think people get gun shy. But if it also kind of goes back to this like fail faster mentality where it's like, okay, it might be the wrong information, but did you at least learn something from it? I think can go a long way. Let's talk about that for a second, and then I have one other piece from that that you brought up that I want to talk about.
Yeah, like in general, from a skill set perspective, and a lot of this came from my years of leading other people, right? Like I knew when we started leading teams at 200, bro, if I was taking 200 requests a day, I wasn't getting anything done, right? So I had to start leading people through it. But to the exact point, I was the guy when I was coming up in my corporate career. I would seek out all the learning modules and I would go do the extra tasks to just learn how to connect the dots so that I didn't have to ask anyone. And then when I started getting ahead of it, because now I knew it better than they did, even, right? When I started getting ahead of it, now I started implementing and improvising and creating my own SOPs, my own skill sets, and what we were doing and creating our own playbooks. Well, then it started getting me in trouble, right? Like I genuinely started living my entire corporate life on damn near a final for everything. And it was always the smallest stuff, but it was because I was living outside of the realm that they were living in, right? But that was also like there wasn't much to say to me because at the same time I'm always number one on the scorecard, right? So I might have been not have been doing it in their way, but I was getting it done regardless. And then the same thing, and we hop over into private sector, bro. I hopped into private sector not knowing, like I ran a retail box. People just walked in my door. I didn't even know how they got there, and then we just had to execute there. Okay, well, now I'm in a world where you have to be not only a sales expert, but you have to be a marketing expert as well. So then I just surrounded myself with everyone that I could see that was doing it well, and then started pulling all of their skill sets from them, right? Like, dude, we can go back to even dopamine effect and learning how to stop scroll.
Yeah.
That's the craziest. That was one of the very first things I learned getting into private sector, right? Okay, so then we pick that up, and now I know that I've over 2 years I've become a marketing expert, and what we've combined with what I was able to learn from a corporate level and in a private sector level. But again, it comes back to those skill sets, right? Like you might not be trying to learn sales. Sales isn't what you're really trying to learn. What you're really trying to learn is your EQ skills and how to connect with people and build relationships, right? And too often we get stuck on just give me the answer and I'll go execute it. Well, that's fine, but that's not a CEO, that's not a visionary. That's an integrator. An integrator will go execute a vision at the end of the day. And when you're in a solo operator world or you have a small business with a small team, that's just not the world we get to live in. Like you have to grow your skill set or you'll always be capped at that level of leadership that you are, right? And some of the guys over the weekend, like that's what we talked about. Like right now, you're acting like a level 6 leader. You're not acting like a level 10 leader, but you're expecting level 10 results. So you're just not being realistic where you are. So now, okay, we're a level 6. What skill set do we need to get to a level 7? What do we need to be a level 8? Right? If I got to sit here and tell you how to figure out average order value, you probably shouldn't be talking about how to add another $500,000 in your business at the end of the day. You should probably figure out how to go figure what your AOV is so that you can double down and increase that by 10%, which is probably going to start to increase your business by 200%. You know what I mean?
No, 100%. And maybe it's a decent segue that, maybe people see like learning and educating as like taking their foot off the gas, which we all know that is not the case. Or I say we all know, we know.
Yeah.
Um, But something you said about like, climbing the ladder and falling two rungs down, but like what did you learn? So that way you only fall like one rung down next time. I think a lot of times like the perspective, I can't tell you how many times in my career I've had to intentionally take a step back. Like intentionally, all right, hold on, like either we went down the wrong path or like we're not ready for this yet or whatever the case is, and intentionally taking the step back. But it was all strategically done to then take three steps forward, right? And I think that too becomes a big hiccup with a lot of people who jump into entrepreneurship or high in, whether it's sales or management, like a high achiever role as like a, you know, whatever, just that type of role. They see progression can only be forward. Whereas, sometimes we have to understand that the only way forward is to take a step back. What's some of like how do you feel about some of that?
Yeah, I would agree. And I almost liken it to like if I'm traveling across the country, right? Like I have a map and sometimes there's a road closure and that's perfectly okay. Well, now I got to reset the GPS. Well, the GPS doesn't know the road's closed, so it's still going to try to tell me to go that way because it's the shortest way to where I'm going, right? Well, now I just got to venture off and go onto this side street that's gravel road and understand that okay, if I take two lefts, I'm probably going to get back to where I was, right? And that's how I've always thought about it. I never punished myself for having to stabilize and step to the right, right? I likened it to those situations, and at times, I had to move. It's funny enough. I was looking at my LinkedIn the other day, and I was looking at like all the times that I was promoted, and you could almost see where I would move. I would get promoted 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, and then it would be like 3 years, and then it'd be 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, 5 years, 6 months, 6 months, and then I left, right? But like that exact point was where I had hit those glass ceilings, and it like I just kept trying to break through them in brute strength, and that wasn't what I needed to do. What I needed to do was truly stabilize, understand where I was at. You know, maybe it was at one point I was terrible at leading women, terrible. I was just always a hammer constantly. Well, women don't respond well to that, right? So I surrounded myself with all women leaders where I had to lead every single moment of the day at something I was bad at. Coming home to my wife wasn't communicating well, right? Going into work, I don't have a choice but to communicate well, or I'm not going to get where I need to go. You know what I mean? So, and those were intentional things. Now, at that same time, when I placed all of those women leaders around me, they weren't the best at the time, right? I chose them out of self narrowed interest, but I believed in them. But I had to then get back in the weeds, build that skill set. This was coming off of a year, 3 straight years where I was number one, and I had three leaders promoted around me. And then I was just left with a team in disarray because they all got promoted. Well, I had to take that step back that year. I think, dude, I went from number one in the company to like 847th out of 900 stores. It was I'd never been there, right? But I was reflecting on myself and like it was because I had built three really good leaders. I didn't build a collective team of 54 that was really good, right? When I did start to communicate through females at the time, I wasn't good at communicating. So then I surrounded myself to the mentorship thing that we talked about at the retreat. Well, I needed to figure out how to communicate better. So I went and found a female leader that had gotten all the way up to the C-suite level of a $50 billion enterprise who was willing to help me learn through that. Right. Then I went and found a peer mentor at the time that was always chasing me on the scorecard. Now she was crushing me, and I had to be humble enough to go and be like, hey, I'm struggling right now. Can you help me through this? Here's what I'm struggling with. And then now I had three really successful female leaders in this enterprise that had accomplished a little bit, but now they were coming into like the big leagues, right? And they weren't ready for it. So then I had that where I was menteeing them, right? The whole way. So it goes back to what we were talking about in yes, maybe you have to sidestep, but at the same time, how can you sidestep, take a different path, take two lefts, do it uniquely, earn skill set so that then when you hit that main road again, you're 60 mile an hour again, right?
No, for sure. And part of this like conversation has to do with, I think a lot of it is like kind of setting your ego aside and understanding that you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Because as you were expressing that like timeline that you had, and every time you hit one of those year, 3 year, 5 years that you went without, there was a transformation in that linear path where it was like, you know, Asa thinks he's hot shit. He hit this, glass ceiling, and then it was like, all right. And then like then he had to go down this linear path and come over here and realize like, okay, I don't. So then you evaluate, all right, there's missing pieces to the puzzle. And then that's where the education came in. You learned those pieces, and then boom, that's where you grew again. And then you again, same situation, you hit that glass ceiling, and there's this whole transformational journey that you have to go from locating what content you're unaware of, educating yourself on that, applying it, maybe even testing it before it even gets good. And then there's this progression there because to your point, and even some of the stuff we've talked about offline just recently about one of the other guys that you're helping with, um, his marketing is maybe not everything we do works for the rest of our lives. Like there's always got to be a pivot, and it's got to be the ones that notice those pivots sooner and educate them on themselves quicker that end up being the top dogs. Because, if we start to pay attention to anything in life, you're in the real estate game. If we pay attention to anything that happened monumentally, like the '08 crash, like even and this could be good or bad, what happened with, that whole timeline from 2020 to 2022, and, things of that nature, these are all telltale signs that like a pivot's coming, and people either sit there and act cautious or they press through it. And, arguably, I had someone asking me, like, man, um, uh, with all the uncertainty that's going on right now with this new election, we're just going to be a little bit more cautious. I'm like, dude, if you look historically, the first year of every term is like that. Everyone's waiting to figure it out. So, like, if you can find a way to push through it and to champion yourself and your team through this during these hard times, and not even that, champion your fucking clients and your prospects through it, like, as long as they understand that you're someone that's not going to stop until you solve the problem, like, why would they not move forward with you?
Yeah, 9 out of 10 times, bro, they want to see that out of you. They want the reminder that you are just as human as them too. Like you don't have all the answers. You know what I mean? And sometimes there's times where you got to be at 30,000 feet looking down from an eagle view and get out of their way and let them do their job too. Like it just depends, right? For me, to go back onto the point around the ego, like for me, my indicator was always obnoxious aggression, always, right? If at any point someone was like beginning to tell me that I'm obnoxious or like I'm just constantly being the aggressor or I have an ego, that was very much indicator that I wasn't being who I was at my core, right? Core, my core is I would absolutely challenge you directly 100% of the time, but I will also absolutely let you know that I care deeply about you before I do it, right? And I guarantee every single man in our group will tell you that I genuinely care about them as human beings above all else, regardless of the feedback that I give them, right?
Right.
And there's constant times where I'm the one that's giving them feedback they don't want to hear. And that's okay, right? But it comes down to how it's communicated. And those come from my own indicators of seeing that I'm living in a world where I feel like I can't be touched. And the only thing that's going to happen is I'm going to get knocked back down. And the world is going to help me realize real quick that I'm not special.
No, for sure. And I think that's, I know this is all like kind of pulling things from a wild standpoint, going from talking about our corporate experiences to private sector. And then now we're talking like inner perspective, because I think to the core, like, again, obviously, you don't know what you don't know till you know it. Like, neither you nor I nor anyone else that's listening that agrees with everything we've said is like woke up and this information was just there. Like we had to go through this process. We had to get, refined by the fire. Like we've fucked up more times than we've succeeded. But that's also like the part that I think most men need to understand and get comfortable communicating is more people can relate to you because of your failures than ever would be for your successes. Like you have a lot of crazy successes. Like I learned something new about you this weekend about the HDMI cable. You know what I mean? Like that's a success story for you that literally I don't think anyone else has like there's like no one else on this earth that has that success story. However, you saying you don't know how to communicate with women, there's a lot of hands that are going to go up on that one, right? And so I think that too for you and myself, like the way we handle the guys in the group is some of it selfishly probably is us pushing just to see what kind of a man you truly are. Are you ready for this group? Are you ready to be better? Because if we push and you try to push back, and it's not like what we think, what we say we think is our way or the highway, but it's like, and there can be healthy pushback. I mean, you were out there with me and Jaybird, like some of the newbies thought me and Jaybird were going to get in a fist fight. And at the end of the conversation, we're loving each other, hugging each other, and talking about how thankful we are for this conversation. But it's at some point as a man or as like leaders inside the group, we're going to push just to see how you take it. Because if you're not trying to grow, we have no time for you, bro.
I love living in that world. Like I'm mined for conflict constantly. You know what I mean? Because 9 out of 10 times that what comes out on the other side of it is some sort of commitment. Whether it's commitment from me to you, whether it's you to the group, like whether it's you voicing that you're gonna go do something on a broader scale, and me and Stoller talk about this a lot. Like me and him both dig deep in how we try to understand why people do what they do. So I'm going to ask you 5, 6, 7 questions that are going to be uncomfortable, but really all I'm trying to do is understand where you're coming from.
Mhm.
Right. And, we recently had that discussion in the pack leader chat around marketing. It was around marketing spend, but it wasn't a marketing spend conversation. It was a mindset conversation. You know what I mean? More than anything. And that conversation was one of those conversations where I'm going to ask you a bunch of really uncomfortable stuff. And I know at the end of it, like, you won't like me in this conversation, but you know my heart. And because you know my heart, you know that I care. So you won't like me right now, but in the morning you'll probably text me tomorrow and be like, "Damn, you were right. You were right." And the only reason I can do that is because of the life experiences that I've had. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. No, and so I think it was a conversation I had with Stoller because y'all do a lot of the similar psychological digging, and even to Stoller's point is he doesn't really give a fuck one way or the other. He when he digs, he's like, I just want to know that they believe in it. Like if
yep.
you're gonna do so, like you have to have a belief in it. Otherwise, like you read it on a fucking post and you ran with it,
Fucking
and now you can't be told no. Like
TikTok
what?
reel. Yep.
Yeah. And so, to that point, and I think, and it goes back to something I said, but I just kind of grazed over. But I truly believe that when anyone gets desperate, they'll act out of character. And so, like, that's why some of these guys kind of, whether I don't know what a term, peacocking or like whatever you want to call it, where you start to press, and then that's when they get defensive or they put out this portrayal that like they know what they're doing or that there's some reason that they figured out that you won't understand. You don't know my business or you don't blah blah blah. And a lot of that like trigger response, I think, is just truly to the deep, dark depths of the holes that they've gone in that they don't even believe in what they're doing. So they can't answer some of those questions. And so the first initial step is get aggravated, get defensive. But to your point, when they have guys on their corner that won't give up on them yet, and because arguably it's not fucking fun digging on some of these people like this. Like it is uncomfortable for us as well, but we understand it gets easier for us, every time we do it. But like when we understand that when we push through this, and there's all the analogies, iron sharpens iron, or like diamonds are built under pressure. Like there's all these analogies that we could come up with, but like it's like we've we've had someone dig in on us and we've seen what it's done for us. Therefore, there's this conviction where like we want to help do this for other men because it's not fun. It's very few and far between the ones that are going to voice their opinion, but like, hey man, I fucking love you, but you're fucking up right now. And here's why. And I'm not saying that it's my way or the highway, but here's a direction to go. Take that route and figure it the fuck out on your own. It now is your responsibility to change this.
Yeah, I was talking to someone over the weekend of we were connecting around our high school football coaches or how I mean, and like I had tried to quit high school football when I was a sophomore. Right? You get into those 2 days and you get into those hot summer days and like the easy path of like to walk is like, oh, my friends are starting to drink, my friends are starting to smoke weed, they're partying, like they have their summers. I want to go hang out with them. And I tried to quit and my mom made me call him directly. Right. One of the very first things where she's like, if you're gonna be a man, you're gonna be a man, and you're gonna pick up the phone, you're gonna call him like a man and tell him you're quitting. And I called him and he drove. We lived way out in the country, but it was 14 miles to get out to us. And he came out and sat on the back porch with me and didn't let me quit. It was like, no, you're not convicted about quitting. Like you're just torn on where you want to go. So like if you were convicted, I would let you quit, but you're not. I tell you, that man knocked on my classroom door every single day for almost an entire year to make sure I was in the weight room. He didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? I was just some 15, 16-year-old kid that I wasn't even playing at the time. Right. But he taught me more lessons right then about being a man, which was actually what I needed given, my father's situation at the time. But like that was more of what I needed, right? And that I've always carried that through and how I care about people. Like if I can care about you more than you care about yourself right now, then I might be able to help you out. And maybe it is just you don't know what to go do, right? And we can work through that. Maybe it is your core values are absolute dog shit and you need someone to tell you that your core values are absolute dog shit, and that's okay too. But I think it changes, and this is where we're at, right? Is it changes for you when you become so profoundly confident in who you are as a human being, right? You've done it so many times and you have so much proof that you are who you say you are. You can have those conversations. You can get attacked personally back because someone is hurt and it doesn't bother you, and I think that's when the game changes, is when you have so much proof you are who you say you are, that you can speak that to that level, and you can speak to whoever you're speaking about whatever it is you're convicted about, and people begin to realize that, okay, it's just, I know him, I know his core, I know who he is as a person, because that's who he is every single day, in the good times and the bad times and the ups and the downs. um and I think that's when it changes for everyone, and I see that in a lot of the guys in the group.
100%. And I think that too, that point you just made, I think it goes both ways. To your point, like when you're pressing on someone, like you're not gonna like me right now, but when you wake up in the morning and get a text, it's like, thank you. And that is, and Heather and I have been really big on this. And this could be by your peer to peer or like husband to wife or two sides of every, there's three sides to every story, my side, their side, and the truth. But then there's also like, for example, you know, oh, like we have these aggressive conversations, and then like someone says something to me, it's like, motherfucker, I know my core values, or I know why I'm doing it. And so it goes both ways. Whereas when I go to bed at night and I'm laying there, and I've gotten to the point, and it's been a struggle. And sometimes, some people here say some shit that I ain't heard before, and I'm like, oh, damn, like that was a little rough one to take, a little tough blow. But typically, if I know, like we're men, bro, like we know the truth, and that's been like something I've said to a few people over the last few years. Like I'm a grown man, you're a grown man. I'm not gonna argue with you on what we both know the truth is. I have zero interest in it and have no time for it. And so for me, it's a interperspective version of that too, whereas someone could be like, oh, like, you're a cheater. Like, motherfucker, I ain't no cheater. I know that. So like I'm not even gonna get like it's gonna roll right off my back. And that could be anything. It'd be like, oh motherfucker, you don't work hard. Okay. Whatever it is. But on the other side of it too, is that person that we have those tough conversations with, they're laying there in the bed and they're like, that was the truth. No matter how hard or easy that was to hear, that was the truth. And I think that that's a big piece of this group. And a lot of us say the thing, oh, like we want to be the best version of ourselves, this, that, whatever. And a majority of us do honestly believe that. But it'll always weed out those people because they'll hear the thing that they need to hear, and it's not fun at the time. But when you're laying there and you're thinking about those three sides of the story, they're like, well, but I really do this. And like their inner monologues, like, yeah, motherfucker, but not really. Like you could
Right.
be better. And I think that's the piece of it too, with being on both sides of it is understanding that there's three sides of it. Because even if I say it in a very polarizing way to you, because we're marketers, and sometimes you guys sprinkle a little salt on the wound first for it to really sink in. And so sometimes some of that might be inflated, but to the core of like what we're saying is the truth.
Yeah. Well, even like another convo, we were talking about, someone who's scaling over the weekend and scaling very, very, very fast, by the way, like spinning a lot of plates. And I had heard something that I thought I heard, right? That was a trigger for me. And even in how I like walking that very fine line of I'm about to attack you as a father, and I need you to hear me when I say this. I don't mean to do that,
Mhm.
right? Like knowing and being transparent in what you're about to say so that you can create a predictable reaction on the other side of like, listen, I've made this same mistake before and I see in what I just heard you say this is going to be a mistake if you continue to go down this path. And then he's like, oh, that's not what I was saying. Perfect. You know, what I mean, we can communicate through that.
Yeah.
By the way, that experience I was going to share with you, it literally doesn't matter right now. Let's talk about your business again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
But like that happens when people know that you care deeply. You know,
Mhm.
at one point, like we even go like, Zach Braddock had that one situation at I think he'd been in the group like 2 days, dude, at that point. 2 days.
Mhm.
And he's like, oh God, my pipe just burst. I'm like, bro, I'm on my walk right now. It's 7 degrees, like FaceTime me. Like that trust that I built with him by being that person that FaceTimed him that night. Then next time he makes a mistake and I'm the one that lets him know he made a mistake, right? Like I earned the right to say that because I genuinely care about him deeply in a moment when he needed us
Mhm.
to be able to challenge him on the other side of it too. And so many guys make the mistake of not being there when guys need them that they just want to have an ego and prove a point around their skill set, like, whether it be a marketing thing or, something that they're good at. Oh, this is my time to shine. No, you haven't earned the right to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's another unique factor amongst the group is like y'all are my best friends.
Mhm.
In 1 year's time, like I literally got the notification today that we were working on my first session of BAP. And now I'm telling you, like the top 10 conversations in my phone, all uncaged guys. You know what I mean? And we genuinely are building long lasting relationships because we're doing hard shit together, but we genuinely care about each other too.
Yeah.
You know,
100.
Jeff Suter texted me yesterday and was like, love you, man. What? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like guys don't do that normally.
Mhm.
But because we've been through some of those hard conversations at those couples retreats and things like that, like it takes it to another level. And now he can come in and give me feedback at any given time and I'm gonna listen.
Yeah.
I might not like it, but I'm gonna listen.
No, man. Yeah, I got one of those texts from him like last week or whatever. He's like, "Hey, man, I'm always going to tell you the truth." And I was like, "Oh, fuck, here we go." And I was like, "God bless it." But like, I don't think I've even heard those words out. I mean, he's probably corrected me a few things over the years, a few times. Like we don't even really like. He's not really like one of those like polarizing like pushback people in my life. He's more of a sounding board to me, right? Which also lets us know like there is levels to this shit, and there's different roles and responsibilities. Just because, Ace and I are a little bit more vocal doesn't mean you gotta like go put boxing gloves on and go after every member. Like there are other, roles and responsibilities and positions with the same thing. Because I mean, if I go to Jeff about something and I'm asking him a question, he's going to give me a God honest response. It's going to be what he believes in. And I have to be prepared. Like it might not be something I want to hear, but it will be something that I was ready to receive. But, no, man, I'm excited about it. I'm excited about everything we got going on. There's just every time I look, there's some sort of growth moving forward from some of the members, and it just gets me fired up. And I mean, obviously, every time I come back from a retreat, it's just been incredible. But no, I want to be respectful of your time, bro, because I feel like we could be sitting here and this could be an 8-hour episode. We're gonna have to do
Could
that
be.
episode in person. Like, but
Yeah.
man, what can we
Maybe
do
live stream
to
it.
yeah, bro. Fuck yeah. Man, what can we do to pay you back for some of the time you spent here with us today?
Yeah, there's two things I always really ask for. Like number one, like do the work, right? Like if there's a tidbit or a tip or anything that was taken away from this episode, like for the love of God, just go do it. Go do the work. You know what I mean? That's number one. And then number two, like if I can help out in any way, like I am an open book. I share everything, but one thing that everyone has to know about me is I am probably one of the best at protecting my barriers. Like if I can't respond to you, I will not respond right now. But I promise you I will get back to you. So, if I can add value in any way, feel free to reach out to me within Uncaged, within the free group, within the DMs, like whatever it means. If I can add any value to you, like that allows me to make an impact on this world. It allows me to make an impact on other men. It allows me to make an impact on their families, on their kids, and then what they'll share, and the impact that they make. So, I think that's the biggest way to change, what we don't like about the world today. So if I can help one thing, man, I'm all about it. So feel free to reach out.
Fuck yeah, I love that. And guys, if you heard something here that just meant something to you, like let me know, let Asa, and I'll share with Asa. Asa will share with me. Let one of us know. I mean, share this video. It's stuff like this. This is how we get information like this accessible to more men as possible. It's through guys like you liking, commenting, sharing it. And honestly, it means a lot to us if there's something that you took and you took action on. Like that's what we're here. That's what, Ace and I just spent 45 minutes talking about is because there's someone out there, there's one person that needed to hear it. And that's why we do it. So Ace, I appreciate you. And for the rest of y'all, we'll see you on the next one. Peace.